Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on the place from where you are joining us today. My name is Suman Sharma from the BRS Secretariat, Geneva, and with me in this webinar is Mr. Alexander Mikhailovsky from FAO Rome. Do you hear me? Is everybody
yes, we can hear you,
me?
Suman. We can hear you. At least I can hear you, Suman.
Okay, yes. Thank you. So I'm sure everybody is hearing me.
If there are any problems, they can write in the chat session, and then we will try to address it. Javier will try to address it.
Yes, please do write in chat box if you have any problem, or you can even raise hands to take the floor. Shall we continue, or it's exactly 3:01 p.m. here, this scheduled time. Maybe we can, as we already see a very good number of participants there, already 52. So maybe we can continue our presentation, or do you think we should wait like 1 or 2 minutes?
Suma, I can see that people are joining in still, so I think we can give 2-3 more minutes, and then we can start.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alec. Okay, let's do that. Let's then we will start exactly at 3:05. Will that be okay?
Yeah, for me, yes.
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah. We have a raised hand. David Carter, please.
David, please go ahead.
And then we have one more raised hand, Chris Kaima, Mr. Chris Kaima.
Yes, David and Chris Kaima. Okay, we don't hear. Where are you, David? Maybe Chris, you can go.
They can maybe write in the chat box.
Yeah, that's the best. If you cannot speak, you can please, you can write it in a chat box. So I don't see any message. Okay, so David, it was a mistake. Okay, that's fine, no problem. Can you email the meeting presentation after the webinar? Yes, we will do that. All the presentations that will be made here will be shared with you with all the participants. Okay, sir, should we now?
Yes, Suman, please go ahead. I think we can start.
Okay, thank you, Alec. Distinguished participants of this webinar, colleagues, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on the place from where you are joining us today. My name is Suman Sharma from the BRS Secretariat, Geneva, and with me in this webinar is Alexander Mikhailovsky from FAO Rome. You may be aware that the history of sharing information on the chemicals in the international trade dates back to 1980s, initiated independently by FAO and UNEP. Later, a component on voluntary PIC procedure was added and eventually resulted to a binding agreement through the adoption of Rotterdam Convention in 1998. And the PIC Circular serves as the foundation for its implementation. I believe you must have been receiving PIC circulars regularly, which have been issued twice every year by the Secretariat of the Rotterdam Convention. During this webinar, we will present you on the PIC circular and its structure and various parts. Once we have finished making presentation, you will have the opportunity to ask questions through chat messages. It is also possible to ask by raising hands if you want. As you are aware, the Secretariat of the Rotterdam Convention is jointly hosted by FAO and UNEP. Hence, we have a joint team located in Rome and Geneva. As you can see in the picture, we have two teams. And that issues the PIC circular regularly. Next slide, please. The PIC circular is published twice a year, in June and in December, in English, French, and Spanish. The circular is distributed to all the parties through their DNAs as an email attachments, also in wafer cards, and also published in the convention's website in Word and PDF, which could be downloaded from there. Now I hand it over to Alec, who will walk you through the different parts of the PIC circular. Over to you, Alec.
Thank you, Suman. Thank you for these opening words and for the introduction into today's webinar. And welcome to all the participants that join in this afternoon session. And I will now continue with the presentation. As you can see, the content of this presentation is basically following the natural order of the PIC circular content itself, because that is our main idea in this webinar session. Namely, the PIC circular is composed of introduction, which contains 3 parts. It's a fairly short introduction of 5-6 pages usually, and I will walk you through the purpose of the PIC circular, which is contained in this introduction. What's the main implementation aspect of the Rotterdam Convention linked to the PIC circular publication? Then we have some additional information as part of the introduction, and then I will walk you through the 5-6 actually appendices that are part of the PIC circular. In the end, I will mention the cover letter, which is accompanying the PIC circular, and also the DNA register that is also published as part of the PIC circular. In the end, I will conclude the webinar, and we will give a chance for Q&A sessions with you. So, as I mentioned, the introduction of the PIC circular starts with a couple of paragraphs on what is the purpose of the PIC circular. So, why we are producing it biannually every 6 months, and what do we want to achieve with its publication. Basically, this part contains the information on what is the main purpose of the PIC circular. Namely, the PIC circular is a key document for the implementation of the Rotterdam Convention, and represents an essential segment of the 2 fundamental provisions of the Convention. And those are both the operation of the prior informed consent procedure and serves as a mechanism for exchange of information on hazardous chemicals in the context of the Convention. As Suman already mentioned, the PIC Circular, we are publishing it twice every year, every 6 months, in June and in December, in 3 languages, English, French, and Spanish. And we are distributing it to all the parties through their designated national authorities. As well, we are dispatching it to the regional and country offices of FAO and UN Environment, and it's also available on the convention website. The present circular, for example, contains the information that is related to and received during the period from 1st of May 2020 until 31st of October 2020. And the information that has been received after 31st of October 2020, meaning from 1st of November onwards, will be included in the next PIC Circular. In addition, the purpose of the PIC Circular is to provide to all the parties, through you as designated national authorities, the information that is required in the Articles 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 11, 13, and 14 of the Convention. And this will be more closely covered in this slide. This is pictured better in this slide, where we have a visual depiction, basically a diagram containing the information of all the articles that are important for the implementation of the convention and what is their linkage with the PIC Circular. So in the introduction, after the purpose of the PIC Circular, you have the so-called implementation part, addressing all the implementation aspects of the Rotterdam Convention that are under full responsibility of the parties and the DNAs, or the institutions that are basically in a way exercising the administrative functions that are required by the convention, which allows the communication with the Secretariat and between parties itself, that is in the end crucial for the implementation of the Rotterdam Convention at national, regional, and global level. And here basically is described the operation of the prior informed consent procedure and the information exchange for each of the relevant articles of the convention. In each of these hexagons that are depicted in these slides under the implementation, in logical orders, we have presented the steps that each of the parties needs to undertake in order to successfully implement the convention. Firstly, starting with Article 4 and the obligation to notify the Secretariat on the designation of national authorities. Then the parties are being reminded on the provisions of Article 5 and 6, and the responsibility of the parties to submit notifications of final regulatory actions under Article 5, and their right to submit proposals for severely hazardous pesticide formulations in accordance to Article 6. And this is published or visible in Appendices 1 and 5 in the PIC Circular in relation to the notifications, and in Appendix 2 in relation to the severely hazardous pesticide formulations. And then what is important is the Articles 7 and 10, and they are both linked to the addition of chemicals into Annex 3, and the responsibility of the parties to submit import decisions for the chemicals that are part of Annex 3 list, and which is the main provision of the prior informed consent procedure, and this is available in the Appendices 3 and 4 of the PIC Circular. And in this implementation part, basically, you can read, for example, that at the last COP meeting, the latest COP meeting, meeting 9, COP decided to add 2 new chemicals into Annex 3, namely phorate and hexabromocyclododecan. In addition, in this edition of the PIC Circular, you can find the information that in the following conferences of the parties meeting that will be held in July 2021, COP will consider addition of 2 industrial chemicals, namely decabromodiphenyl ether and perfluorooctanic acid, its salts, and PFOA-related compounds. In addition to 4 chemicals, actually 5 chemicals that have been already previously been recommended for listing. And you will hear more about this in the Appendix 6, when I will cover the Appendix 6 part of the PIC Circular. And then What follows is the information provided on Article 12 and its relation to Annex 5 and the obligation of parties to exchange information on exports through the so-called export notifications. Then Article 13 and the obligation of the parties to accompany information on exported chemicals. And then Article 14, namely information on chemicals that are recommended for listing and information on so-called transit movements. So this is the implementation part of the introduction, and then the introduction is finishing with the so-called additional information, where you can see an overview of information that is very important also for the implementation of the convention itself, and is providing documents that are linked to the above mentioned part 2 of the implementation, where you will see listed with the respective downloadable links provided the documents that are important for the implementation and for your knowledge, like the text of the convention, all the digits that are linked to the Annex 3 listed chemicals. We have provided available through downloadable links all the forms and instructions like import responses forms, FRA notifications, proposals, SHPF proposals, export notifications of national authorities designation of contacts, notifications of national authorities designation of contacts, etc., etc. We have also links where you can access all the PIC circulars, and you can access all the country contacts or register of the designated national authorities of the Rotterdam Convention. In the end, this part is finishing with the so-called resource kit of information on the Rotterdam Convention, which provides collection of publications containing information on the Rotterdam Convention. And this is very important part which can assist you. Its main aim to assist you in awareness raising activities, and it's providing detailed technical information and training materials aimed at facilitating in the implementation of the convention. In this slide, you can see all the 6 appendices that are part of the PIC circular, and now I will go into detail into all the 6 appendices one by one. Basically, each of these appendices provides detailed insight and updates into the latest developments and changes with regards to the fulfillment of the obligations of the parties in relation to the main provisions of the convention. And basically, whatever changed and whichever information the Secretariat has received in the last 6 months from the publication of the previous PIC circular goes into these appendices. Starting with, for example, Appendix 1 with information of the newly received FRA notifications, then potentially Appendix 2 on proposals for inclusions of SHPFs, Appendix 3 if potentially a new chemical has been added into Annex 3, Appendix 4 newly received import responses decisions for the Annex 3 illicit chemicals, and Appendix 5 and 6, and I will go into details into all of those later throughout the presentation. So the first Appendix 1 basically contains a compilation of the notifications of final regulatory actions to ban or to severely restrict chemical received by the Secretariat since the publication of the previous PIC circular. And it's linked to Article 5, namely procedures for banned or severely restricted chemicals, and the obligation of the parties to notify the Secretariat whenever they ban or restrict a chemical at national level. And also is linked to Article 14, or information exchange, and the obligations of the party to exchange scientific, technical, economic, and legal information concerning chemicals that are within the scope of the convention, which includes also toxicological, ecotoxicological, and safety information. Basically, also do this obligation is referred to Annexes 1 and 4, which are submitted pursuant to Articles 5 and 6 of the Convention. In this case, only Article 5. This appendix is divided in 3 parts: Part A, Part B, and Part C. Firstly, I will show you that in the PIC Circular itself, we are providing a clickable link with which you can access the database of all the notifications that have been submitted by the parties to the Secretariat, which have been already shared with you with the previous editions of the PIC Circular. And through this clickable link, you can see that firstly, in the first tab, you can access the information on all the recently issued notifications of final regulatory actions that are published in the latest edition of the PIC Circular. You can see the name of the chemical, party that submitted it, the category of submission, pesticides or industrial chemical, whether the final regulatory action has been ban or severe restriction, and the date when it was published. And in this case, it's always the 6th of June, if it's the June edition of the PIC Circular, or in this case, 12th of December, if it's the December edition of the PIC Circular. In this clickable link, you can access all the final regulatory actions notifications that have been submitted by party separately, and notifications that have been submitted for non-Annex 3 chemicals or Annex 3 listed chemicals. So this goes into the website. And then this slide provides you the information that is available in the PIC Circular itself. And basically the first part, Part A, contains summaries of notifications verified as complete and meeting all the information requirements in accordance to Annex 1 of the Convention text. And the way the information or the summary of the notification is presented is basically resembling the notification from the party used to notify the Secretariat, and through the PIC Circular, the other parties for its final regulatory action to ban or to restrict chemicals in order to protect human health and the environment in accordance to Article 5 of the Convention. And the summary briefly describes the scope of the actions, the final regulatory actions, and the reasons for the final regulatory actions taken by the country, including information on hazards and risks of the chemical in relation to human health or environment, and expected effects of the regulatory action. In this way, through Article 14 provision of the information exchange, the parties are basically sharing and exchanging scientific, technical, economic, and legal information concerning the chemicals within the scope of the Convention. And then in the end, after this summary or extract of the full content of the FRA notification, we are also providing information on when the information at the end is the date of entry of the force of the final regulatory action for the party that notified the particular chemical. In this case, we have an example of the last PIC Circular, the notification submitted by Mozambique on the pesticide 2,4-D-dimethyl ammonium. The next slide is basically providing the information that Appendix 1 contains also 2 other parts. Parts B, we are just listing the notifications that have been verified as not meeting the information requirements of Annex 1 of the Convention. In this case, for this PIC Circular, we had only one chemical that was not meeting Annex 1 information requirements. And this information, you can see it in the PIC Circular. And Part C contains a list of notifications that have been received, but they are still under verification. And after the Secretariat goes through the verification process, they will be published in the next edition of the PIC Circular. either in Part A as meeting Annex 1 information requirements, or in Part B as not meeting Annex 1 information requirements. And as you can see in Part C, there is quite an extensive list for the notifications that myself from Rome site for pesticides and Suman from Geneva site on the industrial chemicals is going through this verification process in this very moment. And you will see the outcome basically of our work and what the countries have submitted in the next PIC Circular edition that will be published in June, 12th of June this year. The next appendix is, after Appendix 1 is Appendix 2, and it contains a compilation of the proposals concerning potentially submitted severely hazardous pesticide formulations received by the Secretariat since the publication of the previous PIC Circular. And this appendix is linked to the provisions of Article 6 and the submission of proposals in accordance, potential submission of proposals for listing of SHPFs should come in accordance of Annex 4, Part 1 of the Convention text. In this case, also the Appendix 2 is divided in two parts. Part A provides summaries of proposals that are meeting the information requirements of Part 1 of Annex 4 of the Convention, and Part B provides a list of proposals that are not meeting, or actually they're still under verification by the Secretariat. And in this edition of the PIC Circular, we have not received any proposals for severely hazardous pesticide formulations, unfortunately. And I'm just providing here in this slide an example from PIC Circular 45. That was the last submission of SHPF we received from Georgia, which was on the lambda cecholitrin SHPF formulation karate, which was considered by CRC 13, basically it was the CRC 13 found out that they were not meeting Annex 4 Part 3 of the Convention text. In this way you can see through this Appendix 2 you can see which parties were potentially experiencing poisoning incidents concerning human health or environment in the last 6 months from the publication of the last PIC Circular. The next slide is showcasing the chemicals listed all the chemicals that are listed into Annex 3 of the Convention text. This is linked to Article 7. Namely when the decision to list a chemical into Annex 3 is taken and the related decision guidance document is being approved by the conferences of the parties, the Secretariat is usually basically communicating this information to all the parties. At COP9, I mentioned that 2 new chemicals were added, phorate in pesticide category and hexabromociclododecan in industrial chemicals category. And we are expecting parties to submit input decisions for these chemicals. At the next COP10, which is scheduled for 19th to 30th of July this year in Geneva, the conferences of the parties will consider 2 new chemicals recommended for listing from CRC 15 and CRC 16 meetings, and namely those are decabromodiphenyl ether and PFOA salts and PFOA related compounds. So this appendix is quite straightforward, and yes, we just invite you to submit import decisions for these chemicals if you have not done so. Basically, each party should have submitted ideally 52 import decisions for all the chemicals that are part of Annex 3. And this comes into the content and the scope of Appendix 4, which basically contains the information compiling all of the import responses for Annex 3 listed chemicals received from the parties. We are providing a link to the online database, which basically is presented into these four tabs, where you can see the information on the import responses that have been recently transmitted. Basically this is available in the PIC Circular in this way. You can see that in the last PIC Circular we had in total around 40-50 import decisions submitted for around 20 pesticides and 23 industrial chemicals. And in this case, we are just providing an overview of all the import responses that were received since the last PIC Circular. I would just want to emphasize here that in the clickable link available in the PIC Circular, you can see also in the second tab the import responses that have been submitted by party. If you click the third tab, you can see all the import responses that have been submitted by parties for each of the chemicals that are part of the Annex 3. And then you can also check for which chemicals each of the parties or USDNAs representing the parties can see for which of the chemicals you're still lacking import decisions submitted to the Secretariat, which is important or one of the main provisions of the PIC procedure, important for the implementation of Article 10 of the Convention text. So again, I would like to emphasize that please access the website, check the PIC Circular, see if you're missing submission of if you're potentially missing submission of import decision for any of the Annex 3 listed chemicals. Ask for support or help or questions if there are any questions or unknowns in relation to this provision. And myself and Suman and the colleagues in the Secretariat will try to address it and to help you as soon as you pose such a request to the Secretariat. You can access this database basically through through the PIC Circular, through this link, but also we have in the PIC Circular we have available link in the country profile. Each country has a country profile, and then there is import submissions, import responses, and there you can see for which chemicals you have submitted import decisions, and for which chemicals, both pesticides and industrial chemicals, you're still lacking submission of import decisions. And then the next slides is basically addressing the content and the scope of Appendix 5. And Appendix 5 contains basically a tabular summary of notifications of final regulatory actions for all the banned or severely restricted chemicals not included into Annex 3 list received by the Secretariat since 1998. And this is linked to Article 5, namely under Article 5, whenever the Secretariat has received 2 notifications and subsequently verifies them as complete from 2 parties coming from 2 different PIC regions, shall forward these notifications to the Chemical Review Committee, who is supposed to review this information and in accordance with the criteria of Annex 2, and then to recommend potential listing to the conferences of the parties. So this appendix is consisting also 2 parts. Part A, which contains tabular summary of all the notifications that have been verified as containing all the information required by Annex 1 of the Convention text. And you have here listed all the chemicals for which the Secretariat has received these notifications as meeting Annex 1. And then the next part B of Appendix 5 contains notifications of final regulatory actions that we have verified as not meeting Annex 1 information requirements. And whatever has been submitted to the Secretariat is available in this table, in both tables, in Part A and Part B in the PIC Circular itself. And we are just updating these tables. And if you want to, for example, check whatever parties have submitted in terms of banning or restricting certain chemicals, in accordance to Article 5, you can find information here. You can also access this information in the Convention website. Then the last, Appendix 6, is basically developed to facilitate information exchange on chemicals that have been recommended for listing into Annex 3 of the Convention by the Chemical Review Committee. But for these chemicals, the conferences of the parties has not yet reached consensus and has not yet made a final decision for listing. And basically, we have developed this appendix in line with COP decisions starting from the conferences of the third conferences of the parties meeting. And then we have basically 6 COP decisions: RC33, RC44, RC68, 86, 87, and 95. And all these are linked to the chemicals that are recommended for listing, but not yet listed into Annex 3. Here we have chrysotile asbestos, paraquat, and phention as severely hazardous pesticide formulations, carbosulfan and acetochlor. And the last 2 are basically not yet have not yet been in front of COP for their consideration, but they will be in the next COP, COP 10 in July, and those are decabromodiphenyl ether, based on the CRC 15 recommendation for listing, and PFOA, its salts and PFOA related compounds, based on the CRC 16 recommendation for CRC 16 meeting recommendation for listing of this chemical. We have a dedicated website for these chemicals. We have the clickable link available in the PIC Circular itself. And all the information related to these chemicals is available in the website. And also this appendix 6 is divided into 2 parts. Part A provides a reference to the information that has been submitted by the parties on their decisions concerning the management of the chemicals recommended for listing. In this case, we have provided information for acetochlor based on the notification submitted by the Africa region, the countries from Africa, Europe, and those are Bosnia and Herzegovina and European Union. And then carbosulfan based on the notifications also from group of African countries and European Union. Then we have information provided on phention based on the information provided by Chad. Paraquat formulation based on the information provided from Burkina Faso. And chrysotile asbestos based on the information provided from a couple of countries from Africa, PIC region, Asia PIC region, Europe, Latin America, North America, and Southwest Pacific. And this is for chrysotile asbestos. And then the part B of this Appendix 6 provides a list of decisions on the future import of these chemicals recommended for listing. And this is a voluntary provision. That means based on the COP decisions, countries are invited to and have the right to provide import decisions, import responses, even for these chemicals that are recommended for listing and not yet listed. And so far, a couple of countries have used this recommendation from COP, or this invitation from COP based on their decision. Namely, Canada and European Union has provided import decisions on chrysotile asbestos. Qatar has provided import decision on paraquat, and Nigeria has provided import decision on phention. So we also want to invite you. We are aware that these COP decisions are basically underutilized, considering, as you can see, the small number of parties submitting these voluntary import responses. And we want to invite you for you to provide information on your potential management decisions for these chemicals, including to potentially submit import responses on voluntary basis, because these are still not listed. That means they are still not part of the obligatory PIC procedure, but still we are inviting you to submit import decisions for this group of chemicals that are recommended for listing but not yet listed. And I would like to emphasize now that in the next period, we're gonna dedicate a series of webinars for these chemicals that are still recommended for listing but not yet listed. And we're gonna emphasize again this basically invite to start submitting import decisions also for these chemicals, although they are not part of the Annex 3 and they are not listed into the as part of the PIC procedure. In the end, slowly coming to an end, the presentation, after accompanying the PIC Circular, we always we are providing the cover letter, which is accompanying the PIC Circular. And the cover letter usually provides additional information, which the Secretariat is using to reach out to parties in relation to CRC meetings, outcomes and decisions, DGD's conferences of the parties, meetings, outcomes and decisions. And in the cover letter of the latest PIC Circular, there are a couple of important things to be emphasized. I already mentioned the fact that from 19th of July to 30th of July, we're going to have COP10 meeting, and there we will consider 2 new chemicals recommended for listing. Then in this cover letter, we have provided information on the outcomes of the CRC 16 meeting and the recommendation of these 2 chemicals for COP10. Then we are providing information of the upcoming CRC 17 meeting, where we have 7 chemicals on the agenda. You can see we have carbaryl, chloramphenicol, iprodiol, metadione, methylparathione, terbufos, and thiodicarb. And information for this is that we have invited you to provide information on trade for these chemicals, because this is an important part of the Annex 2 of the convention text that will be considered by the CRC review committee. And then we are providing information on the fact that the Rotterdam Convention Compliance Committee entered into force for all parties on 6th November, and inviting you to submit notifications for the ban or restricted chemicals in accordance to Article 5, import decisions in accordance to Article 10, etc., etc. So it's a very important source of information for what is coming, what has happened in the last. It's giving a very nice overview. So we always invite you whenever, or when we submit the PIC Circular, also to carefully read through the PIC Circular, because there is always important information that is shared there. In addition, the last part is that is accompanying the PIC Circular is the DNA register, which contains the most updated list of the DNA contacts. We always invite you to have a look at this DNA register. If something has changed in the contact details for each of the DNAs, official contact point persons, phone numbers, emails, please have a look. And if there are certain changes, contact the Secretariat so we can update the information in the following edition of the PIC Circular and the following edition of the DNA register, which is also reflected in the convention website. In the end, I would like to conclude with a couple of points. The PIC Circular represents the most comprehensive implementation and information sharing document produced by the Secretariat. Unites the most up-to-date information combined with the historical memory and database created of all the import decisions and the notifications of final regulatory actions, including SHPF proposals submitted by the parties which are related to the main provisions of the convention. You know that this is a living, changing document that can always be improved for the sake of your own benefit. In a sense, this is a document that is created and fed in with information from you as parties, and basically it comes back to you again through the Secretariat in a format and in a structure that you were able to see during this presentation. We are looking forward for your feedback based on which we can improve the content and the way we are presenting the data, which is part of the wider clearinghouse mechanism under the convention. Thank you very much for your attention, and now I give the floor back to Suman, who is the moderator of this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Alec. Thank you very much for this very elaborative and very clear presentation. And I was also following up on the chat, and I had a very good discussion over the chat boxes that many of the participants did want to have this presentation sent to them in languages. Some colleagues who wanted that in French or in English, Spanish. So for we do have plan of making this presentation in French and Spanish, most likely within this semester, if we could do. But we did have similar representation in French and Spanish and English last year. So those presentations are available in the libraries. If you wanted, you can go and get those information from there. And we will have these in languages in coming days too. So this is one thing. And also I just shared with you a link for the, your feedback. There's a questionnaire seeking your feedback on our presentation on the PIC Circular. Please use it. If you could do it, it's not very long. I believe you can just do it during even while we are discussing it, you can access. Please do submit that. We value your inputs, and it will only help us to reach out to you even better in more effective way. With that, if there are any questions to Alec, please either you can raise hand and then you can take the floor, use your mic, or it may be much easier if you just write it in the text chat box. So I can see few questions coming. Let me see. Just a minute. Okay, so this is Julia. We must update the contact information in the official way and the format, or can you use the email for fast communication? Did you mean the changes in DNA, or just the your email as a participant. You are talking about changing the national contact point information. If that is the case, then yes, it should come officially. Is there anything further that you would like to add, Alec?
No, I mean, there are two ways. If it's simple updates of information, they can send an email to our colleague Ivan from the BRS Secretariat in Geneva, or she can simply send it to us and we forward it, and this information will be updated. That's one thing. And if it's more substantive change, it should come from the OCP or from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs officially to the Secretariat, and this change of DNA in this case will be addressed as fast as possible. Yeah. So these are two ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. So this is yes. So this is it. Are there any further questions from?
I'm seeing question on submission of import.
Yes, please.
This is from June. Could you guide us on how to send import responses? Is it through the website portal with the password, or is it through email from the DNA? Both ways, yeah. It's up to you to decide which way you want or you prefer to submit the import decisions. We have an online format available with a password that is dedicated for each of the DNAs, and then you can use this online format and submit the import responses in this way, and then we're gonna control them, verify them, and publish them in the next PIC Circular. If there is certain issues, we're gonna contact you back. And the second way is also to send them directly to us, to me or to Suman or to the generic email of the Secretariat, and we're gonna take care for them as well. So both ways are fine with us. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. And there is a question on whether the change of DNA is a substantive one. Yes, it is. Change of DNA has to come through an official channel, meaning through DNA or through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or through the OCP.
Yes.
Marie says the former DNA is still being contacted for export notification, though on the website it has been updated. Okay, we're not aware about this. I don't know what can we do, because this export notification is sent by the exporting parties. They should use the information provided in the website, that is in the convention. But yes, we will bring this into attention of the parties.
What is the question? I didn't.
Dr. Gaia is asking that the export notification they are receiving on the name of former DNA, who does not exist anymore in the website, in the database, but this person keeps receiving the export notification. Yes.
They should contact the exporting party in this case, or so the exporting party updates their contact details. So in this case, I think I mean, it's not something that we can really interfere. I mean, we can mediate, let's say, or try to help if they are not responsive, depending which exporting party we are talking about, so they can correct this mistake. But it's something that can be addressed directly party to party. That's why we are also sharing this DNA contacts register list with the parties.
That's the idea. Yeah. Thank you, Alec. And there is June is asking not DNA, but the contact person in the already named DNA. What is that?
In this case, can be an official email official email sent from the OCP or from the authority does not need to go through the notification or nomination of DNA official, but a simple email sent to us will be sufficient.
Yes.
Okay, we have a couple of raised hands, Suman, so I think we can give them the floor to ask question orally.
Okay, let me see who is. Okay, this is Ahmad Surani. Yes, please go ahead.
Yes. Hi, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank you very much for inviting us to attend this interactive session and exchange of information about such important issue and the critical issue when it comes to the food security challenges in our different countries, especially in the global north countries. So thank you very much again. And my question actually is, to what extent you have a strategy to involve more the civil society actors and organizations in such important discussion and reflection and exchange process on such important issue. Thank you.
Alec?
It's a very interesting question. I would like to say that we do not have, let's say, enforcement mechanism under the convention. Especially not towards the civil society and NGOs or any other aspects of the civil societies. We are working with parties, with DNAs, and with other country stakeholders to raise the awareness of the importance of the implementation of the convention. PIC procedure, sharing information on hazardous chemicals, the importance of submission of import decisions, the importance to share information whenever countries are banning or restricting a certain chemical at national level, the importance that the countries need to communicate through export notifications whenever a country basically is banning or restricting a certain chemical at national level and still it exports it to another country to send export notification to alert the country that a chemical that is considered as hazardous at national level at the exporting country is being basically sent to an importing country to be aware of the reasons behind this decision in terms of concerns for human health and environment. And basically, that's why we are working with the parties, with the DNAs, who on their own behalf, as part of the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Agriculture, whichever ministry is designated as national authorities, should also work with plethora, multiple national stakeholders, including the social society in terms of raising awareness for the importance of the not only Rotterdam Convention, but also Basel and Stockholm Convention and now Minamata Convention. That means the family of these multilateral environmental agreements, because we have so-called also synergy arrangements between the three conventions as part of a couple of COP decisions taken in the past. Yes, we do not even have enforcement mechanisms with the DNA, I mean, with the national authorities that are obliged to implement the convention under the international law, and not to, let's say, mention the civil society. That's, I would say, is something on that is falling under the responsibilities of the countries itself. That would be my, let's say, a tryout to answer this a bit complex question. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Alec.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question. The idea is, the implementation of this kind of thing does need the participation of all the sectors of the society, and NGO and civil society definitely do have a very good role to play in raising awareness about the health and environmental, impact of the chemicals international trade. So this is exactly why we have the, clearinghouse mechanism, we have the websites, we have the training, we have the materials available. So many materials, they are available in the website, they are there. These information, these PIC circulars, the information are not only limited to the eyes of the DNAs only. It is for everyone in the country. So this is how we want to have our reach extended to all this sector of the society.
So just contact us. I mean, whichever question you have that potentially didn't get answered in this session, please do not hesitate. Contact us, me, Suman, both of us, the generic email of the Secretariat, Geneva, Rome, it doesn't matter. We will address your question as soon as possible. Yeah, thank you.
With that, I would like to thank you all for your active participation. It was a great webinar, a great participation, more than 100 at some point. And thank you, Javier, for your support. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.